You don't have an insomnia problem. You have a depth problem. And there is a very specific difference between those two things. An insomnia problem is about how much sleep you're getting. A depth problem is about what kind, and it turns out you can sleep a completely normal number of hours and still wake up exhausted, because almost nothing about the 6 or 7 hours you spent unconscious ever reached the deep stages your body actually repairs itself in. 6 habits. None of them require sleeping more. All 6 are specifically about sleep depth, the deep, slow-wave stages where the actual physical repair happens, and together they explain why some people wake up from 6 hours feeling genuinely restored, while other people wake up from 9 hours feeling like they barely slept at all. Stay with me until habit number 6, because number 6 is the one that lets you actually confirm, within a single week, whether the other 5 are working, instead of guessing based on how tired you feel, which turns out to be a surprisingly unreliable measure on its own. But first, habit number 3 is the one that's going to surprise you most, because it has nothing to do with your room, your schedule, or anything you drink. It's about what you're actually lying on, and it may matter more for deep sleep than almost anything else on this list. Let's begin. Most of us think about sleep the wrong way. We track hours, did I get 7, did I get 8, and assume that number is the entire story. Sleep researchers have known for decades that total duration is only part of it. Sleep happens in cycles, moving through lighter stages and deeper, slow-wave stages multiple times a night, and it's specifically the deep stages, not the total hours, where the body handles most of its physical repair, memory consolidation, and hormonal regulation. 2 people can sleep the exact same number of hours and get a very different amount of actual deep sleep, depending entirely on conditions most people have never thought to manage. Japan's traditional approach to the sleeping environment, built over centuries around minimal, deliberately chosen conditions rather than accumulated comfort, happens to hit several of the specific variables sleep researchers have identified as most protective of deep sleep stages specifically. There's a concept behind this, Namuri no Shitsu, sleep quality, treated as a distinct, manageable variable separate from sleep duration. 6 habits. Each one targeting a different, specific input into how much of your night actually reaches deep sleep. Let's go through every single one. Habit number 1. Sleepwear and bedding made from breathable natural fiber, rather than synthetic material. You probably never thought about the material of your pajamas or sheets as a factor in sleep quality. Comfort, sure, but not something with a measurable effect on how deeply you actually sleep. Stay with me, because this connects to a specific, well-documented mechanism that most sleep advice never mentions at all. Here's the mechanism. Core body temperature needs to drop for the body to enter and sustain deep, slow-wave sleep. It's one of the primary internal signals your brain uses to initiate and maintain those deeper stages throughout the night. Synthetic sleepwear and bedding materials trap heat and moisture against the skin considerably more than natural fibers like cotton or linen, which are more breathable and better at wicking moisture away, allowing the skin's temperature to drop and stay lower throughout the night rather than fluctuating or staying elevated. Research on sleep and thermoregulation has found that even a small, sustained increase in skin temperature during the night can measurably reduce the total time spent in deep sleep stages, because the body is working against its own temperature drop signal rather than being supported by it. Traditional Japanese sleepwear and bedding, the cotton yukata, breathable futon materials, are built around exactly this principle, favoring lightweight, breathable natural fiber over the heavier, often synthetic blend bedding more common in many Western homes. The shift, the same number of hours in bed, spent in breathable natural fiber instead of heat-trapping synthetic material, allows your core temperature to drop and stay lower throughout the night, directly supporting more time spent in the deep sleep stages your body actually needs to repair itself in. The practical version of this habit doesn't require replacing your entire bedroom at once. Start with what's directly against the skin, sleepwear first, since it has the most direct contact with your body temperature throughout the night, then pillowcases and sheets, then, if you're ready for a bigger change, the blanket or duvet itself. Cotton, linen, and bamboo-derived fabrics all perform meaningfully better on this specific measure than polyester or other common synthetic blends, and the difference tends to be most noticeable in warmer months or in homes without strong climate control, where the gap between a breathable and a heat-trapping fabric has the most room to actually matter. That is habit number 1. Now, habit number 2 is where this gets interesting, because it involves a specific pre-sleep technique most people have heard of but rarely do correctly. Habit number 2. A slow, systematic body scan, progressive muscle relaxation, done lying in bed before sleep, not a general, try to relax. Most people, once in bed, simply attempt to relax in a general, unstructured way, close the eyes, hope the body settles on its own. A structured body scan is a specific, sequential technique, and the structure itself is what makes it considerably more effective than an unstructured attempt at the same goal. Here's the mechanism. Progressive muscle relaxation involves deliberately tensing and then releasing each major muscle group in sequence, from the feet upward, spending several seconds on each before moving to the next. Research on this specific technique has found it measurably reduces the time it takes to fall asleep and increases the proportion of the night spent in deep sleep stages, largely because the deliberate tension then release sequence produces a more complete physical relaxation than passively trying to relax ever manages to achieve on its own. Passive relaxation attempts often leave low-grade, unnoticed muscular tension in place throughout the night, which a structured body scan specifically identifies and releases, one muscle group at a time. The shift, the same 10 minutes lying in bed before sleep, spent on a structured, sequential body scan instead of a vague, general attempt to relax, produces a measurably more complete physical release, and a body that's genuinely, fully relaxed falls into deep sleep faster and stays there longer than one that's only partially settled. Here's what the actual sequence looks like in practice. Start at the feet, tense them tightly for about 5 seconds, then release completely and notice the difference between the tension and the release. Move to the calves, then the thighs, then the glutes, then the abdomen, then the hands and forearms, then the shoulders, then finally the face and jaw, which is where an enormous amount of unnoticed daily tension tends to quietly accumulate without most people ever realizing it's there. The entire sequence takes roughly 8 to 10 minutes done unhurried, and most people find that by the time they reach the shoulders, they're already noticeably closer to sleep than they would have been lying still and simply hoping to drift off unassisted. That is habit number 2. Now, habit number 3, the one I mentioned at the very beginning. Stay right here, because this is about something most people never think to examine at all. Habit number 3. A firmer, thinner sleep surface, closer to a traditional futon than a deep, plush Western mattress. Slow down here, because I know what you're thinking, that a firmer, thinner sleep surface sounds less comfortable, not more conducive to deep sleep. Here's the specific spinal alignment mechanism at play, and why the traditional Japanese approach to sleep surfaces may be doing more for deep sleep than most people realize. Here's the mechanism. A very soft, deep mattress allows the body's heavier points, hips, shoulders, to sink unevenly, which can pull the spine out of neutral alignment throughout the night, and research on sleep surface firmness has found that spinal misalignment during sleep is associated with more frequent microarousals, brief, often unremembered awakenings that interrupt the deep sleep cycle without the sleeper being consciously aware they happened at all. A firmer surface, providing a more even, stable base, tends to keep the spine closer to neutral throughout the night, reducing the frequency of these microarousals and allowing longer, more continuous stretches of uninterrupted deep sleep. The traditional Japanese futon, a firm, thin mattress laid directly on tatami flooring, is a deliberate, centuries-old application of exactly this principle, favoring firm, even support over the deep, plush sink of many Western mattress designs. The shift, the same body, sleeping on a firmer, more evenly supportive surface instead of a deep, plush mattress, experiences fewer of the brief, unremembered microarousals that quietly fragment deep sleep, a difference in what you're lying on, not how long you're lying there. This doesn't necessarily mean replacing an entire mattress overnight, which is a significant expense most people aren't ready to commit to purely on the strength of one video. A firm mattress topper, or even a trial period sleeping on a well-supported futon-style setup in a guest room, is enough to genuinely test whether this specific variable makes a noticeable difference for your own body before making a larger investment. Preference does vary by individual. People with certain joint or hip conditions may need more cushioning than a traditional futon provides, but for the average sleeper without a specific medical reason to avoid it, testing a firmer surface for even a few nights is a low-cost way to find out where you personally land on this spectrum. That is habit number 3. Now, habit number 4, and this one is about what's filling the room around you, not what's underneath you. Habit number 4. A consistent, low-level ambient sound, rather than either total silence or unpredictable noise. Most sleep advice defaults to recommending total silence. For many people, particularly those in urban environments where total silence is unrealistic and any unexpected noise breaks through jarringly, a consistent, low-level ambient sound actually performs better. Here's the mechanism. Research on sleep and auditory environment has found that a steady, unchanging background sound, sometimes called pink or brown noise, closer to the sound of rain or a steady, low hum than a sharp, variable noise, can mask sudden, unpredictable sounds that would otherwise cause a brief arousal, without the ambient sound itself being disruptive, because a steady, unchanging sound is one the brain habituates to and effectively stops registering as a distinct input. Total silence, by contrast, means any sudden sound, a car outside, a settling house, a partner shifting position, stands out sharply against a completely silent baseline, more likely to cause a brief arousal than the same sound would against a masking ambient background. Traditional Japanese homes, with lightweight wood and paper shoji screens rather than solid doors, historically produced a naturally consistent, low-level ambient soundscape rather than true silence, an environmental detail that happens to align with what modern sleep research on auditory masking has since found to be protective of continuous, undisturbed deep sleep. The shift, the same bedroom, with a consistent, low-level ambient sound instead of true silence, is measurably less vulnerable to being disrupted by the sudden, unpredictable sounds that total silence makes far more noticeable and more likely to cause a brief, sleep-fragmenting arousal. A small fan, a dedicated white or brown noise machine, or even a simple looped recording of steady rain is enough to produce this effect. The specific source matters far less than the consistency of it. What doesn't work nearly as well as anything with variation built in, like music with distinct sections or a podcast with speech, both of which the brain tends to keep partially processing rather than fully habituating to, which can end up working against sleep depth rather than supporting it. The goal is genuinely boring, unchanging sound, steady enough that within the first few nights, you stop consciously noticing it's there at all. That is habit number 4. Now, habit number 5, and this one is about a specific evening habit many people assume helps sleep, when the research says otherwise. Habit number 5. No alcohol within at least 3 hours of bedtime. A drink before bed is widely assumed to help sleep, and for falling asleep specifically, it often does seem to help, at least initially. The effect on deep sleep quality across the rest of the night tells a very different story, and it's one most people never connect back to how tired they feel the next morning. Here's the mechanism. Alcohol does tend to reduce the time it takes to fall asleep, which is precisely why the sedative effect feels helpful in the moment. As it's metabolized over the following hours, however, alcohol has been consistently found in sleep research to suppress deep, slow-wave sleep and REM sleep specifically during the second half of the night, producing a lighter, more fragmented sleep pattern in the hours after the initial sedative effect wears off, meaning the same night's sleep can feel easier to fall into, while actually delivering meaningfully less of the deep, restorative sleep stages that matter most for how rested you feel the next day. The shift, the same total hours in bed, with alcohol avoided in the 3 hours before sleep instead of consumed right up until bedtime, shifts a meaningfully larger share of the night toward deep, restorative sleep stages instead of the lighter, fragmented pattern alcohol tends to produce in the second half of the night, even though the alcohol version might have felt easier to fall asleep into. This is worth being specific about, because the disconnect here is exactly why so many people never make the connection on their own. The night itself often feels fine, sometimes even easier than usual to fall asleep into. The disruption happens later, during the hours you're already unconscious and have no direct awareness of, which means the only evidence most people ever get is a vague sense of grogginess the next morning that gets attributed to almost anything except the drink from the night before. Moving that same drink earlier in the evening, while outside the 3-hour window before bed, preserves the choice to have it at all while removing its interference with the specific hours of sleep that matter most. That is habit number 5. Now, habit number 6, the one I told you at the very start, lets you actually confirm whether the other 5 are working. Stay here, because this is the most important thing in this entire video. Habit number 6. Track subjective sleep depth each morning for 1 week, not hours slept, but how rested you feel on waking, rated on a simple scale. This last habit isn't a sleep intervention itself. It's the measurement system that determines whether you can actually tell if habits 1 through 5 are working, rather than relying on vague impressions that are notoriously unreliable when it comes to judging your own sleep quality. Here's why this matters. Most people, asked whether their sleep has improved, Answer based on a vague overall impression that's heavily skewed by how the previous single night happened to go, rather than any genuine week-over-week comparison. A simple daily rating, on waking, before checking a phone or doing anything else, rate how rested you feel on a scale of 1 to 5, creates an actual, trackable dataset instead of a fuzzy impression. Because the changes from habits 1 through 5 are often subtle night to night, the same kind of daily noise problem that affects any habit tracking applies here too. A single night's rating tells you very little, but 7 consecutive ratings, compared against the days before you started these changes, reveal a real trend that a vague, end-of-week impression alone would likely miss or underestimate entirely. The shift: you don't need to guess whether these 5 habits are actually improving your sleep depth. You need 7 days of a single, simple morning rating, because a genuine week of data will show you a trend that your own foggy, in-the-moment impression of "I think I slept okay" almost never reliably captures on its own. There's a second benefit to this habit worth mentioning, beyond simply confirming whether the changes are working. Writing the rating down, even briefly, tends to surface which of the 5 habits you actually stuck with consistently across the week and which ones quietly slipped after the first night or two, information that's easy to lose track of without a written record, and that turns out to be just as useful as the rating itself when you're deciding what to keep doing after the first week ends. That is habit number 6. Here is everything in one breath. Sleep in breathable natural fiber instead of heat-trapping synthetic material. Do a structured, sequential body scan before sleep instead of a vague attempt to relax. Consider a firmer, more evenly supportive sleep surface instead of a deep, plush mattress. Keep a consistent, low-level ambient sound in the bedroom rather than total silence. Avoid alcohol within 3 hours of bedtime. And track a simple morning rested rating for 1 full week to actually see whether it's working. 6 habits. No supplement, no new device, nothing beyond what you likely already have some version of in your home. Every single one begins tonight, the moment you get into bed. You were never sleeping wrong in some vague, unfixable way. You were simply managing duration while several specific, manageable variables that determine actual sleep depth went completely unaddressed. Now you know exactly which 6 they are, and you have exactly 1 week to find out for yourself. So here's what I want from you before you close this video. Start tonight, and rate how rested you feel tomorrow morning, on a scale of 1 to 5, before you do anything else. Then tell me in the comments which one of these 6 you're starting with. Is it number 3? Are you curious whether a firmer sleep surface would actually change anything? Is it number 5? Is tonight going to be the first night in a while without a drink close to bedtime? Tell me the number, 1 through 6, in the comments right now, because naming it is the first step, and someone reading your comment might try the exact same thing tonight because of what you wrote, and come back in a week to compare notes with you on what actually changed. If this changed how you think about sleep, send it to the one person you know who always says they slept fine but never actually wakes up feeling like it. They're 1 week and 6 small changes away from finding out what deep sleep is actually supposed to feel like. I'll see you in the next one.